I'm going to be in charge of this. I need those with me now, because I can take all the boxes, I can take all the miscellaneous stuff.
Yeah, she doesn't want to listen to actually good advice, so I'm just going to cram it all in here. She's proving that she's the independent woman now by telling me how the best way to pack this is. It bothered me to the core.
And frankly, that's one of my favorite qualities about myself, that I can do things on my own.
Hey friends, it's Katie from Without a Crystal Ball. Welcome back to my channel. It's Monday, August 7th, 2023. Kody Brown's brothers came after me. No, they didn't. They didn't really come after me, but they did call me Miss Crystal Ball in a derogatory way. Yeah. And so Kody Brown might have sent his brothers after me. And this by far is the most interesting thing that's happened to me in a very long time. I took the bait because I knew they were baiting me, and I have a story for you. So let's talk. Last week, I left a comment on their tiny little podcast, Brothers Random, about a video that they made, which was horrible. And they asked me to come on to their podcast. And I really wasn't going to. I don't want to go onto their podcast because their podcast is very much about how men are under attack by us lonely women that actually have equal rights. You know, they want to claim that because women are somehow becoming more balanced and equal in society, that that's somehow a threat to their patriarchy because they're patriarchal men. Anyways, so I sent them an email, and I wasn't expecting to be on their podcast. I was more just wanting to see what they had to say. So it started off good enough, but I wanted to be very clear with them that I am who I am, right? I wanted them to be like, yo, you're asking me to come on your podcast, but do you know what I do? Because I speak about sister wives, and I'm not super fond of polygamy, and I'm kind of not a fan of your brothers, you know? And I'm sure they already knew that. And so the exchange started off good enough, but it's quickly devolved into a mess. So I started by contacting them on July 30th, and I said, hi, I'm reaching out based upon your exchange on your channel. You'd asked about coming on your podcast. I'm sending you an email per your request. Are you familiar with my channel and work? Let me know, Katie Joy. I wanted to be transparent right off the bat, okay? So it took them 2 days to respond to my email, and they said, Katie, thanks for reaching out. To be honest, we are not very familiar with your work aside from a few videos here and there. Is it accurate to say that you are not fond of our brother Kody? In regards to discussion on YouTube, are you game to have a deeper talk with us on a show about your disagreements with our video? To address the elephant in the room, if you're familiar with our videos, you know that we seldom talk about Kody or his show. However, it would be lots of fun to hear your perspective and insight on the eradication of the Y chromosomes. If you would still like to have a discussion, let us know and we can put you down on the schedule. They did a video about this really obtuse theory about the eradication of the Y chromosome, and they used this as sort of a tool to sort of prove that there's people out there that want to eliminate and exterminate men, which is so ridiculous because some wackadoodle professor comes up with a really wild theory. Somehow they use that as proof that men are under attack. And so I had zero interest in talking about this because I think it's a ridiculous theory. It's never going to happen. And it's just, if you're going to use something like that to try to prove to you the world is against you, it's just, you're really reaching, really. Because I am a woman and I love men. I'll tell you that. I got a husband. I have a son. I grew up with boys and have lots of men in my family that I love. I had a lot of guy friends. I'm not a man hater, you guys. I love men. When I responded to them with their questions about Kody, I wanted to be extremely transparent. And I wanted to explain to them exactly who I was. So this is what I said. I'm a reporter that covers fundamentalism, extremism, cults, reality television, child exploitation, child abuse, and crimes against women. I'm heavily against anything that promotes strict patriarchy. Despite those feelings, I don't think a debate about the eradication of the Y chromosome is really even relevant because it will never happen. I'm very interested to know why your podcast is so heavily focused on the ideas that men are somehow under attack. I don't believe there's attack on men at all. I think there's a balance in our society and drive towards equitable relationships, which isn't a bad thing. I have found myself puzzled at times by your podcast. I know you both have stated you left the AUB and believe that you were raised in a cult. I now see that you've turned into sort of Jordan Peterson as a sort of guru to answer many of your life questions. They're very heavily into Jordan Peterson, and that it seems to me like my opinion is kind of the replacing one belief system with another, and that can happen. You can go from one group to another when you leave groups of high control. So I said, have you ever considered branching out from a single group, people or groups dictating your thoughts, or viewed the world outside of the scope of fundamentalism that you were raised in? This isn't an attack, but rather a question. What harm is it to you if I, as a woman, have a job, provide for my family, and have equal rights to work, pay, and fair representation in corporate and government settings? My overall sense, I just want to stop here, was that a lot of their podcast really did focus on this idea that because women are becoming more equal, that this was somehow a signal that men were under attack. And it's just, to me, again, not true. Like, it's just a balancing of the genders. And I said, have you ever thought about things from a woman's point of view? We don't have a lot of women in positions of leadership to look up to. Why? Because a patriarchal system has taught for centuries that women have no intrinsic value outside of our reproduction or sexuality. I see that both of you are open to new ideas, so I'd be open to exploring a topic that is relevant and impactful. The Y chromosome will never be eradicated, and I know no woman that wants women to be more powerful than men. I know no woman that wants to get rid of men. I only know women that don't want to be reduced to their reproductive systems and sexuality. They want to be treated fairly and with respect. They don't want to be objectified and harassed. And I said, I think many people are interested in hearing from people that leave cults like the AUB and how one strips their mindset from the toxic and abusive beliefs. Have you ever considered a podcast on that topic? I said, my views on your brother are no different than probably 99.9% of the general public who find him to be narcissistic, abusive, exploitative, and manipulative. But this is really irrelevant to this topic. Your brother has his own demons, and his children are very outspoken presently about the abuse they faced and continue to face by him. I don't expect you to not love your brother nor to agree with my opinion. I do hope that you can be open to the pain your nieces and nephews are experiencing as a result of his parenting or lack of parenting they experienced. Then I went on to say, I cover sister wives as a way to have a broader conversation about polygamous cults and the harm it causes the people involved. Both of you have expressed the harm you experienced growing up this way, and so I'm fairly confident we all agree that polygamy cults are abusive and hurt people. I engage with ex-members of the AUB daily and have mostly positive experiences. Most are open to learning and understanding the damage of the teachings they learned, and many have having to relearn basically everything about life. I see both of you exploring new ideas, and I find that very commendable. If you're interested in discussing any of the topics above, other than the show, which is not necessary, and I don't have interest in talking about your brother with you, that's not why I've watched your content. I hope this helps. When I reached out to them, I did not reach out to them because I wanted to talk about Kody. In fact, they actually brought him up first, as I showed you. And if you're going to ask me to be on your podcast, and my body of work speaks for itself. So I'm not going to pretend like I like their brother. I'm also not going to pretend that my beliefs line up to theirs. And I understand very relevantly that these two really don't have much of an interest in having a dialogue with me about the dangers of patriarchy, because they're very heavily into patriarchy. But I felt like if it could at least give me a window to express, that women aren't bad and that equality isn't a bad thing, and maybe plant a seed that looking at it from a woman's perspective wouldn't be a bad thing. Maybe it would potentially open doors. Now, I don't expect them to respond to this with positivity, trust me. I understand that they're going to be upset with me. I know that they're not going to like what I have to say. I know that I'm not going to be popular with them. And I know that the fact that I said things about their brother is going to make them upset. So I own that. But I'm also not going to lie to them and say, yeah, I think Kody's great. Because I don't think Kody's great at all. So it took them 5 days to respond. I sent that to them on August 1st, and they did not respond until August 5th. This is why I thought this is weird, because like they had it took them about 2 days to respond to the first time. And then the next one, it took them 5 days. So I was like, well, why is it taking them 5 days to respond? And once I got the message back for them, it really, to me, felt like they had gone back and sort of spoken to Kody, because their response to me felt like a lot of what Kody would have to say. And it was very gaslighting and very deflective. And for the most part, like, I wasn't trying to deflect anything or gaslight them in my responses to them. I just said, I don't want to talk about this, but if you're open, I would be willing to talk about these things to you. But I knew that they weren't going to want to talk about those things. Anyways, so their response to me was this: people are complex, and big topics deserve nuance and long conversation. All the things you addressed in the previous email, we could speak about on our show. However, some of your inquiries in the aforementioned email begs the question on whether you are someone acting in good faith or whether you are being sincere. You know, that's a fair observation from them, is that, was I acting in good faith? I mean, if they would have been willing to have those conversations, I might have had a conversation with them, but you know, I didn't feel like they were being sincere to me. So I think the distrust was going both ways. With all the hatred that you spew at our brother, you can understand our hesitation. Now that we have dived further into your content, we now have questions about your motives. We are doubting whether a conversation with you would be of any value. However, we are interested in you and why you are so passionate about the topic of cults and everything that goes along with them. Were you perhaps raised in a cult? Could you have been a part of a cult now? Do you ever feel guilt over making a living on your YouTube channel exploiting misery and caused by cults? You guys. So they started off with all the hatred you spew at her brother. You know, listen, I don't have the nicest things to say about Kody, but I don't have a lot of nice things to say about patriarchy. And I'm never going to defend someone that on national television is doing really awful things to his children and to his wives. And Kody spews a lot of hatred in his words every day on the show. And I'm going to always stand up for women and children. So, but did you see how they kind of like didn't answer any of my questions about, you know, what I'd asked them about? With that being said, we are somewhat troubled by the following statement from your last email. So of all the things I said, this is the one thing that bothers them. What harm is it to you if I, as a woman, have a job, provide for my family, and have equal rights to work, pay, and fair representation in corporate or government settings? We are not certain as to what we possibly could have said that would make that question a part of your inquiry.
He's sitting in a house built by men, on concrete poured by men, driving on roads built by men, that, you know, in a car that's built machines and women and men. But like the hubris to just sit there and be like, yeah, all the violence of men, like, who's he going to call if a burglar breaks into his house? I mean, there's some female police officers, but guaranteed if it got to knockout, drag out brawl to get this burglar out of his house, he's going to want a man.
And I can speak for my brother on this. We have never said or even thought about anything to do with the previous paragraph. We have never said nor implied that we are threatened by women with jobs. We do agree on the Y chromosome will never be eradicated. It is just pseudoscience at best, but you inherently miss the point of our episode. It's not whether or not it can be eradicated, but that there are people there who want to eradicate it. And if you would have listened to the Chris Williamson podcast we referred to in that episode, you would have known this. I did know that. I knew that they didn't believe it would happen, but I knew they were using this as a fact to say that there's people out there that are doing this. And so therefore it's proof that they're under attack. Like it's like this tiny little red herring argument. Like there's people out there that are attacking us that want to eradicate us. You know? It's a weird argument, and it's nothing that even matters to anything. Anyways, having said that, we leave you with one last question, Miss Crystal Ball. Do you believe that misogyny of the past justifies misandry in the present? Because while you have not Well, you may not see misandry in your everyday life. We see it growing in our society. Men are more likely to commit suicide, more likely to lose custody of their children, and more likely to drop out of school. And we are trying with our YouTube channel podcast to encourage young men to be better, to bring some positivity to the world, and we encourage you to try to do the same. There's a lot to unpack with that, and I think I did it best in my response. So let me just read to you what I said. I appreciate your response to my email. However, I asked you several questions and posed specific concerns, and instead you redirected those questions towards me. When I explained my concerns and those of the wider public about your brother related to the abuse of his children and wives, the wives have accused him of, you turned this around on me by implying that reporting on cults is exploitation. Additionally, you deflected this question by probing about my own background in cults and suggested that I am in a cult. None of those questions are relevant to the topic at hand. Exploitation is defined as the action and fact of treating someone unfairly in order to benefit from their work. As a reporter, I do not exploit members of the cults to do work for me, nor do I mistreat members of cults by seeking information from them or seek their help in better understanding their world. It's important for the wider public to have knowledge of the dangers of cults and the abuse that happens within cults. Abuse, exploitation, violence, and religious extremism are a matter of public concern in our society. The work I do does not meet the definition of exploitation. Every person I speak to about their involvement in their group is given respect, space to tell their story, and freedom to stay off the record. I never force anyone to speak out that is not ready. Many people I work with from the AUB remain completely anonymous due to their own fears of retaliation and fear of exposure to violence. TLC is a reality TV network that does exploit families and does treat them unfairly in their contracts. Their contracts heavily favor that of the network and the primary person paid. Children are frequently forced to perform under the direction of their parents. The network does not pay children for filming. The network is exploiting children and sadly exploiting many people in cults that were otherwise financially destitute and sought better financial security. In many ways, they began by exploiting your brother, and he then in turn exploited his family. His kids have stated, and they were never paid and filmed and worked for no pay. That is the definition of exploitation. I understand the defensiveness you have regarding my reporting. I am not popular with patriarchal men that view equity of minorities and women as a threat to their power. That was my question to you. Have you ever considered that the insecurity you feel due to your power being attacked is fueling your drive to only see men are the ones under attack? The discussion around men and ending one's life is far more nuanced than to claim a shift in power draws men to end their lives. In fact, studies have shown that the way men are gendered to be hypermasculine and not deal with their feelings can contribute to them not seeking help for their mental illness. Women are more likely to seek help for mental illness than men due to the way that society frequently views mental illness as weakness. And I just want to caveat that I didn't pull that out of the air. I actually got that from the CDC because they are more likely to do this, but it does have to do with the way society views mental illness. And then I said, it's very easy to look at statistics and claim that men are under attack and there is hate against men using statistics to prove that theory, but correlation does not mean causation. Misandry is wrong, and according to Merriam-Webster, misandry is defined as hatred, contempt of, prejudice against men or boys, and can manifest in numerous ways, including discrimination, degradation of men, violence against men, and objectifying men. Nothing I do or report is misandry. I do not hate men. I do not promote any sort of violence against men, and I don't objectify them. I then went into some statistics, which I pulled from RAIN, which is the national SA group that manages like all reporting. They have a 24-hour day hotline, and it goes into very specific, it went into very specific facts, like 1 in 3 women versus 1 in 4 men have been dealt with DV, and 1 in 7 women versus 1 in 25 men have actually been injured by a partner. And then when you look at the actual SA, when it comes to like men versus women, women are more than 5 times more likely, and they comprise 82% of all juvenile victims and 90% of all adult victims are women. So from a society perspective, it's actually women that appear more vulnerable. And so I said, women are more likely to be abused by their partners and more likely to be SA'd. There is a clear imbalance in these statistics. The data does not suggest that men are under attack, but rather that women are much more vulnerable to our SA and violence. This is why I asked you why you are bothered by the equity of women. Women wanting equality do not hate men, but rather they seek representation in the workplace, government, and fair representation under the law. Under the Constitution, women are still not granted equal rights. It's only been a little over 100 years since women were given the right to vote, and we've also been able to own property and live independently for just under 150 years. Men in the United States, specifically white men, have always had these rights. Change in society isn't easy, but I remain concerned that your content is heavily focused on scaring men into believe that equity and equality of women and minorities somehow equates to an attack and hatred of men. The only threat to men is that they will have to share power, which I don't know why is a bad thing. I could go on about this topic all day, and I'm not going to further entertain your accusations against me because this isn't about me. I left a comment on your page about the topic. You asked me to consider coming onto your podcast. I shared that I find the conversation unnecessary, and I was honest about my feelings about your brother, polygamy, and the view of patriarchal ABUSE. If you aren't interested in being open to new ideas, that's fine. I thought you were, since you both seemed open to the exploration of new concept. Critical thinking is not encouraged in the AUB, and I recognize that many of your beliefs have been drilled into you through years of indoctrination. I cannot change any of that. I can only offer you that there are other ways to see the world, and there is possibility of change, and I work every day with people who leave extremism and cults and find freedom on the other side. I do hope you recognize that you have many nieces and nephews that are deeply hurt by Kody's exploitation and ABUSC of them, and that that's Kody, not me, that did that. Every year, Without a Crystal Ball donates to charity and nonprofits that helps victims of and crimes, and I even donate to Holding Out Help, which helps women and men escape polygamy, and what is Kody doing with his money to help anyone other than himself? And then they contacted me, and they basically said that they didn't want to move forward with the podcast. So here's the thing, you guys. It appears that Kody and his brothers are consuming a lot of online content surrounding the men's right movement. The men's right movement is like this subsection or this this subculture that rejects this idea that women are more vulnerable, more exploited, and hurt more than men. They believe that women wanting rights is actually to take rights away from men, and they just refuse to look at any proof that what the validity is to what women are saying. So instead, they view women's rights as an attack on their rights, and that men's rights is about restoring order. And they consume all of these different people that tell them that, the reason why all these bad things are happening to you are because of feminists. And so a lot of the people that they're consuming are anti-feminist, and they believe that feminists hate men. They reject any statistics that prove that women are more vulnerable than men, or they reject statistics that say that women get paid less than men. And they reject statistics that women are SA'd more than men, or that there's a problem with SA when it comes to women. A lot of this sort of was built up after the Me Too movement happened. And they're really into Jordan Peterson, who has sort of become this sort of God picture for the patriarchy and for the men's right movement, even though that's not necessarily what he claims to be. But a lot of men look at him as, oh, well, he espouses these beliefs, and so therefore everything that they're saying about men is wrong, and women just want to ruin us, and that's it. Kody talks about the manosphere, and he doesn't want to mansplain, and it's really just men's rights. Our movement is misogyny undercover. So they don't have to tell me that they're misogynistic without being misogynistic. All of their content is misogynistic. And Kody, I can just imagine Kody sitting behind his little computer and sending his brothers over to me to tell me that I am attacking him, that I'm spewing hatred, that I'm not uplifting men, that I'm harming people in cults, that I'm exploiting people, when really it's those patriarchal men in the cults that they are born in that are doing those very things. And the sad thing is these guys recognize that there's bad things happening in their cult that they grew up in. But they're so blinded by this idea that they grew up believing that women are just broodmares and have no intrinsic value, have no intelligence, and no anything, period. That anything that we say, any data that we prove, any facts that we show are meaningless. And so when I give them facts, they say, we're done. We're not going to have this conversation with you. So they want to have conversations with me that they're being attacked, but they don't want to hear how women are being attacked. It's not about women, it's about men. Men are the ones under the attack. And it's just it's a strange subculture I'll never understand. And that's where Kody is. I believe a lot of the stuff you see about Kody on the show is very much explained by the manosphere and the men's rights movement. Kody says that he hates when people play the victim, but Kody has literally found a subculture community that has told him that he's the victim of everything. That's why he's the victim of Christine, and that's why Janelle and Christine are stealing his family. That's why everything with what's happening in the destruction right now is about his wives. It's why he said that he wasn't going to win in court, that men don't win in court, that, custody never goes in favor of men, that Christine's poisoning them against him, that it's always the men that are under attack and by women, and that it's not women that are oppressed, it's men. So Kody found a culture, and his brothers have found a culture that lets them be the victims that they want to be, even though they don't want anyone else to be the victim. Make it make sense. That's what you're going to see this season on Sister Wives. And I feel like this email exchange between him and his brothers, me and his brothers, helped me see completely who Kody is. Kody is a consummate victim. Kody surrounds himself around with other men that believe they're victims. He goes into communities like the men's right world that tell him he's a victim, and then he refuses to see the truth because women are just Miss Independent and Miss Crystal Ball, and anything that we say that happens to us isn't true because it's always the men that are being attacked. It's never the women because they have no value for women. They don't respect women. And Kody wants to be a victim. He wants to be vindicated. He wants to feel like he's done nothing wrong. And the men's rights movement tells him, it's not my fault I lost my kids. It's not my fault that I'm a bad dad. It's society's making me feel like a bad dad. Society's making me feel like I should be depressed. It's just a way for him to commiserate with other jerk dudes that don't want to take accountability. So I see through them. This email exchange taught me who Kody was. I know Kody was involved in this. I know that it took them 5 days to contact me because Kody had to have something to say. I know that them putting it back on me, that I'm the one doing these things, is really them trying to play the victim. Like, no, it's not Kody's fault that he's exploiting his family. It's your fault that you're talking about the fact that he has a show on television. Doesn't make sense. So that gives me an understanding of who Kody Brown is. I'd love to know what your thoughts are in the comments below. Should we make merch that says Miss Crystal Ball? Bye, guys.